Hello everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to the Monday edition of my bi-weekly behind-the-scenes DM-only live stream crafting Icewind Ale, in which I build, write, and prepare for our next session of Rime of the Frostmaiden. If you are playing characters of Robin, Frey, Celeste, Edmund, or Thimbleweed, this is not the right stream for you, but for the rest of you, welcome. There will be lots of spoilers. Stream our D&D sessions live on YouTube every Friday. Watch all of our D&D sessions and reviews here on YouTube. You can follow me on Twitter at Rogue Watson and join our official Discord server with invite link in the description below. If you'd like to support the channel, please check out patreon.com/RogueWatson. For our campaign, we use Roll20.net. And for streaming, I use Open Broadcaster software with Streamlabs. We're back on it. So we're looking like we're gonna do a one-shot this week, which means because we've got some players out, so I've got a little extra time to prepare, which is always nice. I'm still gonna do my normal crafting schedule because I could always craft some more Icewind Ale, and we can still talk about It Ascendant a little bit more, but we can also talk about now that I know where my players are actually going next, which is yay, they picked a good one. The Goliaths. We are going to be headed east towards the mountains. Now, the Goliaths are in the book. And they even have two pretty good-sized, cool maps in the book to represent Wormdoom, Crag, and Sky Tower Shelter. But not really anything that's interesting going on there. There's a lot of information. From what I remember, there's a little bit of a Hatfield and McCoy thing, which is like two feuding clans who have like kind of simmering Cold War almost with each other. And of course, the classic tale is usually that thing that made them hate each other is not a big deal at all. And in this case, that's true. It's just like I think it's a misunderstanding about somebody heard a griffin accidentally playing a game or something, and the two clans like are at odds with each other, and the players are just kind of meant to be mediators. But there's no interesting like steps along the way or twists or anything other than just ferrying the characters back and forth between these two locations. So I'm going to have to expand that area, make it a little bit more interesting. And I think I'm going to do that by using a third party. Let's see, what is it called? From the DM's Guild, from the same designer that did the Expanded Towers of Aetherin. I'm also using. Gotten there yet? It is called, what is it called? Encounters in Icewind Ale? Nope. Adventure Bundle, Wormdoom Hunt. Alright. From the Frostmaiden Adventure Bundle. Let's see if I can find it on. I mean, I could talk about It Ascendant, but I thought I'd talk a little bit about the Giants. I was not prepared. Let's see. Under Wormdoom Hunt. Okay, yeah, so you can search Wormdoom Hunt. But I will put I'll put this in the catalog specifically, as this is kind of what I'm looking at. By Dan Kahn, who has made a lot of really great material specifically for certain campaign adventures. Most recently, I've been reviewing a lot of his products that he's done for The Wild Beyond the Witchlight, which have been really, really good, even though I don't necessarily am looking at running that adventure, but I'm looking at the material that he's been producing and been like, this is exactly what I want. If I'm running this adventure, this is the kind of themes that I'm looking for. I want more dungeon crawls and more just, it does a great job of expanding all of that stuff. And I think the same is true for Rime of the Frostmaiden. And this one in particular, unfortunately, it uses a frost giant, which we just did a lot of frost giant stuff, so I may change that around. But it also uses a white dragon, which ironically we just dealt with an ancient white dragon, but this time a fightable white dragon, I would say. I may upgrade it into maybe just an adult dragon, or I could replace the whole thing. But essentially, they gave you a quest to go up the mountain and deal with this giant dragon combo situation, which I think is a lot more interesting than what's currently going on with the Goliath. You could still do the, hey, this Goliath troop, or I would think maybe even escalate the situation to where like they are straight up fighting each other. Like, don't turn into a cold war, make it a hot war, and so that maybe they have to actually deal with Goliaths fighting each other. But or make it more of a D&D mission. It's like, hey, you go here, you get a very RPG like quest of go to this area, take care of this problem, and then we'll reward you in kind. In this case, the reward would be to probably expand Frey's magical axe, maybe give it like the final upgrade. Actually in chapter 2, isn't it? It's weird that we're this far into the campaign and I'm still looking at chapter 2, but that's just kind of the way the book is set up, and how I like to spread out all the chapter 2 stuff throughout the campaign. Throughout, I guess, the first 2 acts at least. Act 3 is purely going to be Caves of Hunger and Ithrin, which is a lot of content, but will not feature any chapter 2 stuff because we will no longer be in the tundra. I mean, look, these are really nice little. I mean, it looks like a dungeon crawl, right? With like the caves, and there's a cool ass like dragon skeleton here, but it's not at all. I guess the other version is you could go extreme and make it be like this place is deserted and has been attacked, and you could turn it into a dungeon crawl if you wanted to. But yeah, there is some that could actually go over pretty well, Lazy DM. There are some fun little activities players can do with the Goliaths. I guess it's just a non-traditional, when you picture a D&D area, all of these areas have been, you go to a hostile or semi-hostile place, and it's basically a mini dungeon crawl. And that's just not at all what the Goliath stuff is. It's like you go to a town, like an outpost, and just kind of talk to people. I just wish there was more of a quest here versus just chatting with people, though, which maybe the being able to play the games is enough. And I think that's why I'm going to add the third-party material, because I think it adds what I'm craving, which is a nice little, not even a dungeon crawl, like just go up the mountain and fight a dragon, which that's what I think we needed. But I do think there's some fun stuff with the sports games that players can play. Well, my players had a lot of fun with like the dinosaur races and that kind of thing. So you could maybe even maybe you could even turn into like a little mini Winter Olympics. That could actually be a lot of fun. Like the 2 clans are meeting together for the Winter Games in the middle, and you've got a whole section of like sports stuff going on. That could be fun. Then it becomes all about competing in these events. And maybe you put in some nice little drama, like maybe somebody's cheating at the events, or maybe there's like a chemical agent, there's a doping scandal that the Goliaths are using. Or maybe just during the whole thing, a dragon attack swoops down. Or maybe that's one of the events is they have to go up and fight this dragon, but I don't know, it turns out there's like there's a complication that makes it a lot harder for them to hunt it or something. Maybe that's a possibility. Just to expand that. Maybe I'm just looking at expanding the sports area to make it maybe a little more interesting. Yeah, I think it's the idea is I have to reread it. There's either a dragon. I think you go up there and you're supposed to fight a dragon, but it's been like corralled and like almost taken over by a frost giant, which I may eliminate that part just because we literally just dealt with a frost giant, so that part feels a little bit too samey. Missing, and they were invited to Wormdoom Crag because they did rescue that one Goliath from Sunblight. There's a wounded Aarakocra. Nothing really going on there. Oh, that's how you get the elemental gem. You can still loot them. Never refuse a challenge for wrestling. Okay. I just wish there was more going on here. I mean, they're cool maps, and there's neat ideas. I mean, the idea would be you want to give them an excuse to go to Sky Tower Shelter, because at Sky Tower Shelter, I think they have a chance to gain Griffin mounts, maybe? Although if they get the It Ascendant ship, then that becomes kind of moot. Chardolin doping. That's a good one. Embedding it in the... Yeah, I wonder if the Goliaths have been finding Chardolin. They've got this hot new tool. Embedded in your skin. That's not weird. Look at the maps while I'm doing this. Arn Rockfist. A good name. Actually, they're straight up not welcome in Sky Tower Shelter initially. Interestingly enough, they are much more... just bar the gates to outsiders. Many summers ago, the children of Sky Tower challenged the children of Wormdoom to a game of Goat Ball. One of the children of Wormdoom, angered at being knocked off her perch, threw the ball at one of our griffins and struck it in the head. It wounded her in return. The game was called off. Days later, hunters from Wormdoom climbed our mountain and slew the griffin in its nest. A grave insult. We've been at war ever since. There it is. If you speak to Wormdoom, they get a different version of the story. Bringing them the cloak of the Wormdoom chief by killing a lie and telling it from wherever. I guess that'd be the interesting thing if the players actually want to side with one side and go and kill the other side. But I think you're also allowed to mediate by restoring Kanaika's sight. Can the characters convince Arn to meet with Olga and settle their differences only at Sky Tower Shelter or on neutral ground? And see, that would be like you could promote like the Winter Games. Maybe I'd have to have an NPC to like prod the players to do that. Killing other Goliaths, Ron is awake and attacks him. Domesticated crag cat by her side. Magic can cure her blindness. Any character restores her vision. That restores you. So that's it. If you can magically cure this one character's blindness, then you can help mediate things. What about a baby Remoraz? Remoraz is fun. Remoraz is fun. We haven't fought one yet. That could be kind of interesting. That would be more of a cave situation versus a top of the mountain situation. Reading about this other place. It's been a while since I looked at the Griffin chapter. The Goliath chapter. Baby griffins. Griffin taming. Takes years. We don't have years. Alright, I need to read some more about this, and then I'll be able to talk more about the Goliaths, but I am looking at expanding that section. Originally, the one thing I was disappointed as that we did not have a Goliath player character into this campaign, because I did think that would be a great excuse to use the Goliaths and be able to integrate that better into a character backstory. But instead, I gave Frey the axe from a Goliath, and then I'm kind of using that as her main character arc and development. And maybe that would be the other thing, is maybe if she received some kind of blessing, then it would help. I don't know. I almost tempted like maybe she could fix her like cannibalism backstory, but I think she kind of likes it. It's, you know, kind of dark and very powerful. So maybe just upgrading the axe would be the way to go. And at that point, it becomes one of those vestiges. Frost salamanders does sound pretty cool. I do have an excuse to use something cool here, and I will definitely use something cool. I will say that right now that third party, like I said, the one that's called Wormdoom Hunt, uses a frost giant and a white dragon. I was initially on board with all of that, and then we just dealt with a white dragon and a frost giant, so that's the only reason I'm a little nervous about immediately running that again. So if my players are traveling east, presumably along the road, and then they'll be going this way, we can use our original plan for launching It Ascendant. It's going to be a 24-mile journey, so that's about 6 hours with the wagon. But then once they get to, we can say like here, can't really ping the map unless I'm here. Then we can start triggering Celeste's the Psi Crystal, which I did not let her deattune to, notice, and pull them up to it Ascendant. Maybe not even put it that far. I can put a little bit closer, or not. I mean, it can still be somewhere where it's like very much not traveled by most people, which would be in this general area. And in that case, and they wouldn't have to pull to it, but I would give them that initial quest hook and let Celeste immediately be able to translate the that cool message that comes in, which is Nautiloid down, emergency protocols enabled, crew safe, but vessel imperiled, Psi Crystal needed, come at once. And that should lead them immediately to It Ascendant first before doing the Goliath. This will be an interesting chance, kind of similar to what I did with our previous excursion where I added Yarlmut en route. But this time I'm adding, and them not having known about Yarlmut, but this time I'm adding It Ascendant, and I'm expecting them to go to It Ascendant first, versus Yarlmut, I expected them to do that second, because this one sounds a little bit more urgent. They could surprise me, they could skip it and go to the Goliath, so I do need to, just in case, prepare some Goliath stuff, but we can worry about that on Thursday, and for now I want to talk some more about It Ascendant, because I was talking recently, that's also why I never put a subtitle on this one, because I just wasn't sure what area would talk about specifically. Jeremy asks, will they encounter any Oral followers on the way? I don't really have Oral followers. I do have her minions. There's one faction I could follow up on, which is Avarice's faction of whatever they were called, the Black Swords, I guess, which were people specifically gathering and weaponizing and trying to take control of Chardalyn in a very powerful way. And it would probably be a good idea to have an update. In fact, I need to probably follow up and have her contact Valravn and maybe try and get some information about it, and maybe have information from her, because ultimately I would love for her to catch up to the party around the time they're in Act 3, or starting Act 3, but I need to have some kind of give and take information there. It's not fair that he would just immediately give all that information to her, so maybe I need to figure out what they've been doing, and it's only been a couple days. Maybe, how long has it been since they were in? It would have been since, let's see, how long has it been since they did Caer Dineval? Caer Dineval. Or travel to Caer Dineval into the castle and deal with the Black Swords. I was on day 5. Day 6. Okay, so I think it's actually been 10 days since they last dealt with Avarice, so over a week. That's more than a couple days. I didn't have a hard plan for Avarice until I was going to use her showing up later. It is hard to get that narrative pacing down when you're doing all these extra things in there, and you also want to juggle the plates of having these ongoing story plot lines. I did that a little bit in Tomb, mainly also with Chris's character, ironically, with Zendala and the whole Ring of Winter plot. I tried to insert that in a couple places, and I should do a better job of that here when it comes to Avarice, just so that I can remind the players that her faction is out there. She still has a direct contact with Valravn. And as far as they know, she's, one of the main wizards, and she is still out there with a whole faction, and she just agreed to vacate the Black Swords premises and now has basically taken control of that faction. To what end? She's also looking for Ithrin, and she needs to be able to follow her way back there. And even if Valravn doesn't tell her things, then I can just have it be like, well, she's been tracking you this whole time or something. Maybe Avarice is a more powerful wizard than any of them expected. All right, It Ascendant. One thing I thought was super dumb is that this very cool uh, organic spaceship has just plain ass ballistas mounted on it, which felt a little goofy to me. Are we to believe that the little gnome ceramorphs operate these giant ballistas, or their flesh golem thing operates the ballistas? It just seems weird. And the first one is the one on the lower level is inoperable, and the one on the second level is supposed to be fully operational, but I'm still not even sure who's designed to do that. Now, I like the idea, and I think it was Sylvan Fox that recommended. My original thought was as part of the defenses of the Ascendant, because I wanted to front load the combat, because I figured the mind flayers would actually be a social situation, a social encounter, and then the fighting of Ascendant would basically be done there. So I was going to have it, okay, what about a stone golem or an iron golem or some kind of golem creature as the defense, the classic robot, and then maybe the walls will pop out with the eyeballs like I did in, or not I did, but it was designed in that one level of Tomb of Annihilation with the Beholder level. But then Sylvan Fox recommended the Mind Witness, which is literally a beholder that's been taken over by a mind flayer, which immediately solves my eyeball problem in terms of which ones that I'd want to use. So now my thought process is, do I just want to replace these ballistas with mind witnesses? In other words, maybe they're not literally mind witnesses, but I'm using the stat block as a organic turret, an automated organic turret that Indescendant uses. My only problem with this is if I give the players Indescendant, that means that they would maybe have the controls over here. Maybe, or maybe that's too alien for them to figure out. And also, like I said, it doesn't really fuck me up too bad, except for, I did realize this, if I give them Indescendant, well, I could still make them crash. Basically, then they would be able to park right next to Grim Skull and not have to land a ship and then go through the Island of Solstice. But I could always have it be this big cinematic, event that's this blizzard appears and force them to crash or something. I could do that. It's a little cheesy, but I could do that. And then at that point, it doesn't really matter if I give them a lot of tools for the ship, because they wouldn't really be using their ship for any of these areas, I think. I'm trying to think where they'd be able to do it, because Act 3 is just completely, they have to descend into the cave of, they have to land the ship and go inside. So I don't think having them access to a powerful ship is going to be terribly game breaking, he said with full confidence. Will she be upset about being abducted? Probably. And I do plan on making it an awkward situation where they have no remorse about that. They don't think that what they're doing is wrong at all. They're not hostile. They're not assholes, but they are probably sociopaths and just don't understand that maybe you shouldn't abduct sentient creatures and experiment on them, or any creatures really, and subject them to terribly weird experiments, even with the pretext of trying to expand their brain power, because probably many of them have died with trying to make that happen. But there'll be something like, this is trying to be our next level of evolution. I will try to use my best Zoidberg. Yeah. I can't actually do a Zoidberg, but it'll probably sound a lot like the Beholder from Tomb of Annihilation that I did. It was a lot of tongue, a lot of slobbery tongue. James, that would actually be a great one. That would be a great excuse to bring back Aviatrix. How cool would that be? It's almost too cruel to give the players an awesome airship and start playing the Final Fantasy airship song whenever they when they get to cruise around, and like, oh man, and just fucking seconds later, this giant ancient white dragon just comes and just rips the shit out of this thing. Especially if they get too close to the glacier, that would be pretty interesting. And that might be a final coda to maybe a good bridge from, man, now you got my juices flowing, a good bridge to get us from Act 2 to Act 3. Let's say they finish, Grim Scala, and they go towards the glacier, and then we trigger this big dragon fight, and maybe we'll let the players, like, hey, you can try to fire off the Mind Witness blasts, and the dragon's coming in and doing all its things on you, and you guys are doing crap, and by then they're like level, 12 or something. Oh, that could be fucking crazy cool as a final thing for. And Aviatrix would just originally see like, what the hell is a Nautiloid doing in my neck of the woods? Especially because I've previously mentioned the fact that she controls the shipping lane, so maybe just by sheer luck they make it to the Island of Solstice, without provoking her ire. But when they leave it, then suddenly the dragon swoops in, and the goal of that fight not only is to provide a fun climactic fight with an ancient white dragon who maybe not necessarily going to stick around and fight to the death, but just enough to down the ship to where they get dramatically downed, and then conveniently they're not that far from the eventual glacier entrance. But maybe they have to fight ancient white dragon towards the end. I don't know. I probably don't necessarily want to kill an important named white dragon in my campaign, but I guess I'm flexible for that. But that is an awesome situation, and now I'm really looking forward to doing that. So I really hope, my goal honestly in Indescendant is to kind of give them this airship either. And the nice thing is, if they decide to go say no remorse, we're gonna avenge Celeste's horrible trauma and kill these mind flayers, and then I will just let them operate the ship. Now there was an interesting discussion in the Discord channel about like, can your players just fly this thing? Maybe, Celeste could probably, maybe through like a skill check or something, and if you fail it, you could still operate it. Maybe you get exhaustion or take psychic damage or something along the lines where I don't want to necessarily just completely lock you out, because that's just not fun. But maybe, it's falling forward, so there's, or failing forward, which means there would be a consequence to, not being able to operate it very well. Or you can work with the mind flayers, help. I don't know if I should give them a quest or just, working with them, bringing them the Psi Crystal is kind of already completing the quests, honestly. So as long as you just say, yeah, you can use this Psi Crystal, and then the Mind Flayers will be like, okay, great, we can use that. And I guess the excuse there would be like, maybe it takes a while for them to be able to go intergalactic, or maybe they're not needing to leave this plane or planet or whatever it is they go to. Maybe they're still like, oh yeah, we still want to go around and do our thing, but now we just need to go around and abduct people. And maybe the players will help them with that. I don't know. Or maybe the players will be like, no, okay, look, we're going to help you with this, but you got to stop abducting people. Instead, we help carry us around to different places, and then, maybe through maybe some really clever, fun role playing, they can either have one of them be subjected to the same experiment, or they can say, look, no, seriously, we brought you the Psi Crystal, that's enough. Take us to, and maybe in that case, they'll only be allowed to go to like one or two places. So I'm kind of willing to work with them on that and try to find a happy medium. But the goal is certainly to let them use this as an airship, because I think at this level, I'm really not worrying about random encounters. Honestly, I think the ones that we had with the giant and the dragon are pretty much the last random encounters I care about. The exception will be when we get to the Island of Solstice, because you could almost, that's no longer almost like a tundra encounter. Kind of that whole area is like an outdoor dungeon, you could kind of treat it as. So I think that would be a little bit different, and I would want to use it as like a gauntlet of encounters, and then that's like part 1 of the dungeon, and then Grim Scala is like part 2. So it's almost all part of one big dungeon crawl at that point. The ship is another dragon, and she's short side. Yeah, very much so. Not even, and even with her experience and knowledge, she might not even be 100% what this is, other than it just looks like a flying monster in her territory that's gigantic. Maybe gross octopus interface to the Mind Witness guns, like they stick a squid on their faces. That'd be pretty crazy. Almost like I'm picturing, what was the movie with the giant star? It was the Suicide Squad, right? The James Gunn one with the Starro and all the it like zombifies people, and they get the nasty like starfish thing on their head with the eyeball. The idea is, though, to be able to have this thing have its automated defenses, really. Although maybe people would have to manually do it, but I'd want these things to just attack kind of automatically, and I can even use the picture and everything just fine. I wonder if I can. I might need to do something in the background just to cover up the ballista, because it's like a little weird. Just some kind of fleshy mound or something. But then what that means is I would use 2 Mind Witnesses, which we can take a look at this stat block. It is a kind of a nice, weaker Beholder. You know, Beholder has 8 eyes. And this guy, or girl or it, Aberration, I think they're asexual, right? They dream each other into existence or something weird. Has 6 rays, and none of them are really scary. Which is the only things that really do annoy me are the ones that are like a death ray or power word kill, where it's like, oh, if you fail this, you just fucking die instantly. Like, that sucks. That's not fun. You know, having somebody roll repeated death saves is pretty fun. It ups the tension, but just that instant, like, oh no, I happen to have a death ray and you died. Like, that one's kind of sucky. So I like the ones that aren't that, which is a lot of cool debuff, slowing, fear, a straight up stun. Telekinetic is just fun, lifts people up in the air, and then I believe one of them does damage. I think, or can it just do? Makes 1 bite attack, 1 tentacle attack, or it uses an eye ray 3 times, which is pretty nice. Maybe it doesn't do damage. Aversion ray is disadvantage, fear, slow, stun, and telekinetic. Okay, I thought it had a damage ray. I guess not. I guess telekinetic could do damage because it would move it 30 feet up in the air, or 30 feet in any direction, which air is the best place here. If they get close, then it can grab the tentacles. I would probably, I mean, for all intents and purposes, I would probably just use the Mind Witness stat block in terms of if they wanted to come up and attack it, they could. But it wouldn't really be a creature that would move around the battlefield. It would very much feel like this automated turret thing that they don't necessarily know how to turn off. Unless, if they're getting their asses kicked, then I can always have one of the Gnome Ceramorphs come out, I guess. I'm already going to eliminate the Flesh Golem because I thought it was really dumb. I'm going to replace that with the regular Golem. And then for the Gnome Squidling babies, I don't know. They almost are just a distraction to what I'm trying to do here in this story. So, not sure if I'll keep them either. The Carrion Crawlers do make for good minions for the Gnome Ceramorphs in case it comes down to combat. So I will keep them. But we're probably going to keep them back and not have them out in the snow. So we're thinking we have an initial fight, which is against, I think, just a pair of Boulets. Weird pronunciation. This is the one where they investigate, you know, the cracked or the pods that have ejected from Idescendant, and they start realizing what they're dealing with, and then happens to be these creatures had also been abducted. I'm still debating whether I want to give them the Mind Blast ability or not. I think that would make things a little more interesting. I think Boulets are pretty strong, but obviously this is a fully rested level 9 party, so they'll be able to handle them. But I do plan on ambushing the party with them and then getting their deadly leap off for sure. And what I'm almost tempted to do is destroy their wagon, which would also prompt them to trying to get the Idescendant thing operational. Because I could have one of these Boulets just jump and do its deadly leap and fucking crush into the wagon, which I could rule would basically destroy. I mean, it would certainly destroy the reindeer like this thing does. If it does its deadly leap, if it jumps at least 15 feet as part of its movement, it can use the action to land on its feet in a space that contains creatures. Each of those creatures succeeding a DC 16 strength or dex save or be knocked prone and take 3d6 plus 4 bludgeoning damage plus 3d6 plus 4 slashing damage. On average, even if they make the save, all those reindeer are killed from that attack. So I kind of like the idea that if they're in the wagon and some of them get out and investigate, but not all of them, and then I can have it be where, you know, maybe it's they've set a trap like this or something. I want to, you know, raptor situation. All the genocider. The crates, save the crates. Is that too cruel? What do you think? Like, I've already eaten one reindeer with a dragon.
They've been using their wagon like crazy. It's been a really good tool for the last bunch of sessions. And the funny thing is, this would be a motivator to like, hey, now you really need to get some. You're worried about shelter and getting around and all that. So clearly, it Ascendant, you need to be able to get this ship operational, and then you can basically use that as your upgrade. So the timing just works out pretty nice. And maybe they'll all shuffle out of the wagon, leave Ballista behind, and investigate. In which case, and maybe I could still do that because the Boulets would be attracted to the reindeers, movement and the thumping on the ground and all that. Because these things can burrow underground and they would be lying in wait. I could add some more if we think I'm being too nice with only 2 of them here. They're CR5. They've got an average of 100 hit points with 17 AC. We just saw them kick a Frost Giant's ass even when they were weakened. So it's maybe I need to add 1 more Boulet. I'm willing to hear that out just to make this fight a little more interesting. Because, yeah, partly the challenge I'm having to do is scale up for these higher level players for sure. Let me know if we think I need to add more on there or not. But that'll be essentially their first fight of this area. And then the second fight of the area will be them coming up to... Yes, the goblin is alive. I need to put the goblin back on the map. Okay, so much about this goblin. This goblin, by the way, if you remember her origins, was the one who was just the messenger that I sent from Korkaloke, who was supposed to give the message about, hey, come to Korkaloke and do that whole quest. And then the players asked what her name was, and I just grabbed a random name out of my ass. And then Ballista was born, and that became this... that's kind of the best way to do NPC. It's so funny. Like, as a DM, you'll craft this lovely, intricate, NPC with all his backstory and stuff. The player's like, okay, sure. And then all of a sudden, it's this just random ass goblin that the players have somehow feel nothing but empathy for because the town was taking less than stellar care of them. And immediately sided with her and loved her, and she's been driving their wagon ever since. So that would be the biggest bummer of destroying the wagon, is that it all but destroys Ballista as well, unless she has some really crazy plot armor on. And maybe she does. Maybe she deserves a better fate than being crushed by a random, especially because just surviving that Frost Giant ordeal, just crushed by a random Boulet from leaping out of the snow does feel a little bit harsh. Maybe I just kill off more reindeer, to where the wagon is still technically operational, but is with the reindeer destroyed, they're also screwed. So I don't necessarily even have to destroy the wagon to screw them over. I can just destroy their reindeer, and then they're screwed. They have nobody else that can pull the damn thing. I mean, I could. That's the other option. I could always change creatures and look for something else. Boulet was just part of the... it's actually built into It Ascendant. It's already here in Rime of the Frostmaiden, so it's easy for me to grab it. The original adventure only has 1. So similar to Dark Duchess, where I added 2 ice trolls, I'm just doubling the number of Boulets. But the ice troll thing I staggered, which I probably shouldn't have done in hindsight, because they were easily able to focus fire each one at a time and take them out both in a single round. This time it would not be a stagger. It would be both of them attacking together. And I would get a surprise round, which also makes a very big deal with combat. If you get that free deadly leap on, it knocks everybody over, it does a bunch of damage. Unfortunately, they do not have multi-attack, which is a little bit of a bummer. Remember, man, you guys are so horny for Remorazes. Holy shit. It's the fireworks factory. When are we going to see the Remoraz? I mean, don't get me wrong, they're very, very cool creatures, and Icewind Dale should be home to them. What are we looking at? CR11, 200 hit points, 17 AC, and it just fucking eats people. It also insta-does melee damage. If it touches the Remoraz or hits it with a melee attack while within 5 feet of it, takes 3d6 fire damage. That's pretty nasty. Which means Frey's Rage doesn't help against that, and every time those her and Celeste hit, it would trigger this damage. That'd be really bad for Celeste, because Celeste hits 4 or 5 times around. It's a target with its plus 11 attack. It does an average of 40 piercing damage plus 10 fire damage. This is a boss monster. This is a fucking boss monster. It can bite, or it can make a bite attack. The creature is already grappling, and then it swallows them, and they start taking that sweet, sweet stomach acid damage. Frost Giant Yarmwood experience would be a good reason for her to retire. I mean, I guess that's true. She could. I mean, I don't know. That feels weird. The goblin's like, I'm just gonna stay in town, guys. Find your own fucking driver. Maybe she could stay. Actually, she wouldn't want to stay with. She could stay with Spellix as a assistant or something. You know what I will do? I'll mention the fact. I'll try to remember this, but I'll mention that perhaps Ballista says something when they make it back to town or while they're traveling. I guess they already made it back to town. But maybe she can say something like or maybe I just tell the players from intuition, like, hey, you sense that she's really shaken up by this, and she's not sure that she's cut out for this adventuring thing and all that. And we'll see where the players are feeling it. Do they really like say, no, you just suck it up and stick with us? Or do they say like, hey, if you want to stay somewhere else, or do you have family or something that you want to go back to? That's perfectly fine. So I'll give them an out for that, basically. Remoraz is crazy strong. I will say we are going to find a Remoraz eventually, but I think that's going to be, yeah, imagine Frey trying to jump on its back. She will try. We are for sure going to see it in the Caves of Hunger. There's a huge central part where Remoraz is there as a really fun kind of mid-boss monster. I think that'll be a fun opportunity for it. So I don't want to tilt my hand too much because I think it's a really cool monster, and I don't want to necessarily overuse it because it should be a pretty rare creature to fight. But yeah, it's pretty cool. But I could change it with something. There was a cool one from Tomb of Beasts called the Rime Worm, which was a really cool, nasty, kind of a giant snail looking thing with like tentacles coming out, and had some cool cold ice themed powers. I could use that creature. I don't think it was much different CR wise. Also don't think it's in, I think they have Tomb of Beasts in here. Oh yeah, they do. Wait, I got it from here. When he's got it all, baby. Yeah, this is the Rime Worm. Big ol' snail with tentacles and crystals. And it kind of has a similar, it's got the aura, which is nice. Not as strong, but it's constantly on. The start of the Rime Worm's turn, enemies within 5 feet take 1d4 cold damage plus 1d4 necrotic damage. If 2 or more enemies take damage from the aura in a single turn, the Rime Worm's black ice spray recharges immediately. That's pretty nice. Spray is a 30-foot long, 5-foot wide necrotic blinding. It's the fucking like Dilophosaurus Jurassic Park thing. Except it's slivers of ice. Slivers of ice that do necrotic damage. Blinding and doing, yeah, that seems pretty good. And it can hit people with a tendril, and then if somebody's grappled by the Rime Worm, takes an additional 2d12 cold damage with Devour. It is a CR6, so slightly stronger. Doesn't have the big, jumping thing that the Boulets do. Actually, not even immune to cold, it's just resistant. And similar stats. It's about 100 hit points with 15 AC, but it does have multi-attack, and it has that spray that it can fire off. I really want to use this creature also. I'm just not sure where exactly I want to use it. It feels like a creature that you would find in a cave. And I'm thinking also the cave would be a better location because it's got that, straight line blast, 30 foot long, 5 feet wide. it's easy for players to spread out in the open, versus if we can encounter this thing in a cave, and maybe we can do something like this, you know, in the Goliath section, when I said that they go up to fight a dragon, maybe they go up in the cave, the first, you know, room in the cave has these rime worms to help, you know, break the party down a little bit. So that could be a useful thing. So I'm definitely going to use this creature as well, just probably not right here, because I think ideally you want to use this in an enclosed space. Take advantage, and also take advantage of its aura. Just being close to its aura deals auto damage and can recharge that spray. Nasty. The grubs at smaller stats. Yep. CR1. Not have any of the fancy things and just lower attacks. Okay. But that's interesting. You could put a bunch of little guys in there. Baby rime worms. Is it an elemental? Isn't that weird? Elemental, huh. Rime worms are large. Grubs are medium. Maybe I could add a third Boule just because they don't have multi-attack. That's the main bummer. Is that too much to have 3 of them there? A lot of players. There's gonna be kicking ass. And me without multi-attack. Because they do that deadly leap. I rolled not great on hit points either. Because the deadly leap does not count as its attack either. That's just, it does that instead of its attack. So you could have like 2 of them deadly leap and one of them just pop up with a bite. But then I don't know if you're going to be able to do another deadly leap again unless they specifically burrow. You could take the disengage action, I guess. Burrow through a tunnel. Somebody like Frey is going to want to follow them. Doesn't have the magic earth elemental ability to just, you know, slide into the ground. But I like that they have tremor sense of 60 feet, which means I can easily have them be completely submerged in the ground and the players walking over them. Maybe they jump out and they can sense, you know, the players walking around a bit, and then they can burst out and do their deadly leaps, flash bites, and get that surprise run out. I think the surprise run will be key here to make this fight interesting. I don't see them lasting more than like 2 rounds. Even though it seems like they've got good AC, but we just saw previously the party can easily attack with like 20 plus. Alright, so right now we've got 3. I think that'll be good for that initial salvo. We're level 9 players, so yeah, a lot of what we're doing is just scaling this stuff up. Then we get to It Ascendant. And that's when they will, I'm going to let them get close enough, because the Mind Witnesses will just look like a fleshy blob. Basically, the whole thing is going to look very organic, and there's not going to be anything of note. So I don't want to trigger, you know, I don't want to just let them see these, you know, tentacle eyeball things at the top necessarily. It's going to be a fleshy mound. And then obviously when they get close enough, can I put them on the map maybe? This map. 30 or 40 feet probably. I want to put them on the top end maybe. It's kind of awkward because there's a, for the image is the different levels, so maybe doing the south side would be better. Wait, Flesh Golem, I'm not going to use you. Here's, in which case they would actually be pretty close. I mean, this thing's got plenty of range. I'm just trying to figure out how close I want to have the players be. Yeah, I can probably put them like here. Let's probably put them like 40 feet. And at that point, I would probably trigger the 2 Mind Witnesses, and then if the players start approaching to like fight, or even if they call out or something, I'm gonna still let the combat go for a while. And then if it gets to where they're coming in and start punching my Mind Witness, my ship base, I mean, they won't know. Again, they'll just think it's a ship. Then I will have the doors open and have one of my robots, my one protector robot, come out, which is going to replace the Flesh Golem, which I think a stone golem is enough. I know some folks thought that perhaps an iron golem is needed here. That is, iron golem is pretty strong. But we don't necessarily have to fight till the death either. Oh god, ball bearing golem. Ha! That's like a T1000. It's literally a T1000. It can assume nearly any shape it chooses. Amalgamation of metal pellets. That's hilarious. Reforms, scatters. That's actually a pretty interesting idea. R6. Bonus action can disperse scattering its ball bearings in a 15-foot cube. It just turns into ball bearings. Can't attack or move except to reform. Can't be targeted by attacks or spells. Alright, that's a silly idea, but... Or you could explode with a recharge ability. Not quite what I'm looking for, but that's a funny idea. I'm probably looking for basically what's got the ability of a stone golem, but isn't literally a stone golem. Boy, people like making golems. Golem. Target is forced into the golem's boiler. So it can put people inside of it and then melt them with fire damage. That's a good deterrent. I like that the stone golem could cast the slow spell though. On a recharge, that seemed pretty helpful. Also has a shit ton of hit points. He has 17, CR 10. How do we think of this combat fight? We've got a pair of Mind Witnesses, and then we're going to have some kind of golem. I just haven't quite nailed down which one yet. Iron Golem's probably going too hard. I also don't like it that he carries a big sword. That feels weird for a defensive robot thing. Seems silly. His abilities don't really work for me, and he seems a little bit too crazy at CR 16. But, I mean, yeah, the players are crazy. Or the dice is crazy. The game balancing gets more and more difficult with every new level, I think. Oh, geez, this thing looks humongous. Yeah, Gargantuan Construct, CR 18. Not quite. One of these tech golems is probably going to work best. Though I don't think the ones that are literally steam could work. Yeah, what's the one that was the excavator that was from Strixhaven? Apparently did not have Golem in its name. I guess I could filter by construct, maybe? Wait, Golem choices. That's a cool one. It also carries a sword. Stained glass window Golem. Got a Golem for everything. Golem or Golem, by the way? I probably should say Golem. Golem is the dude from Lord of the Rings. This looks like a transformer. Armory Golem. That's really funny, actually. Just all the different pieces or that you would find in the armory. Forged. Titan. It's probably too big. Huge. Yeah, it's gonna be too big. Fit in the ship. But stat-wise is pretty close to what I'm looking for. Has platforms built into its chassis. That's awesome. So you can like ride it. Multi-attack, an axe hand, and a hammer fist. But again, I like the stone golem because it has that slowing. Like, the idea is that this robot would be able to take care of creatures that escape. So any kind of things that can pacify creatures versus kill them would be more thematic. Why I liked the stone golem having its slowing effect would help. Or being able to, like, capture people. It's too weak. Maybe I'm barking up the wrong tree with the whole robot thing. I mean, yeah, I could take the Titan and just make it smaller. Absolutely. There's no reason I need to use the same thing. If I did use this, what does it look like? I guess I could always use it and change its abilities around a little bit too. I think it is currently, and then I could just size it down to a large. I could just exit out of here. That's true. The Mind Witnesses do have that. They've got all the debuff stuff I'm looking for. Bludgeoning damage can pacify. It sure can. It sure can. And don't forget, one of these is going to be up on a second level. So this is useful. This little cutaway here, which I'm tempted to show my players. Even if they want to run up and attack the other one, they're going to have to deal with the second one, which has pretty much range unless they all get on. Actually, look at the way it's built. Even if they get on this first outer level, this thing still has range over them. It's only once they get inside the ship that the Mind Witnesses can't target them anymore. But this thing will be raining hell from above unless they can find a way to get up 25 feet. Now, obviously, my players have a lot of tools to do that with, which is the nice thing about this level. The nice thing about this level, by this level, I mean once they get out of Tier 1, you can just throw problems at the players, and they will find a way. Life will find a way. Like, they've just got so many tools available, and between spells and different just built-in hero abilities. I mean, Frey can climb any kind of surface. She's Spider-Man basically. Thimbleweed can go up and down with his bugs, and Edmund can always drink. Which somebody, by the way, pointed out on the YouTube comment that after he does his initial free elixir, if he ever spends a spell slot to make additional ones, he doesn't have to roll. He can just choose which ones to use. We have both been missing that rule for this entire time, and nobody, as far as I know, pointed out to us until then. So he could always, in other words, he could always make that flying potion, and then you got another person who can make it up there. So I'm perfectly happy with keeping this as it is, having a one up there from above that's just firing down at them every round, and then they have to choose from there. But I think it's the only way that this Mind Witness battle is interesting is if you have something else pop out of the ship that can go deal with the players, because these things really aren't doing a lot of damage themselves, especially if I'm not flying around with them, which I'm not. I'm going to keep them pretty much rooted here. Or I could change that and have it be like, well, they're still automated defenses, but it is basically just a mind. I don't know, maybe I'm getting away from the whole automated defense thing, and it's like, look, let's just turn these into creatures, because creatures are easier to run. So I could have it fly around with 20 feet. I mean, that's not a lot of movement anyway. But I was literally picturing it like not even being a literal mind witness, but being a part of the ship that just comes alive with eyeballs popping out and fires the players, and then only through essentially the gnome Ceramorphs turning that off does that battle end. Or if the players take, I will allow them to deal damage to it and have them have hit points, which would basically permanently disable them. Brew quarters, I'm not sure. I think it's these vats in here. They like live in these vats or something. In 3. Cryogenic stasis pods. Each of these 4 rooms contains a 5-diameter crimson semi-translucent crystal sphere in a low stand. Each sphere is a cryogenic stasis pod designed to keep a gnome Ceramorph or a gnome Squidling alive and healthy on a long voyage. So there you go. The crew quarters are a bat. And 5 there, and 6 is where you actually like plug in the psi crystal, I believe. 7 is the bridge. Oh, they do have a captain's quarters at N9. I guess that's kind of where you do all your command stuff. That's true. So that's one of them. Okay, so now it adds up. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then the play thing at the end, which is a weird, like, oh, by the way, go take care of this creature for us. Which I would just launch them, which I'm going to do, before they even get to Id Ascendant. I could look at Modrons. Look at that stat block. Uh-oh, are they not called Modrons? Why don't I have Modrons in here? They're all called by the different thing. I guess our Modrons, like Tridrone, one of them. Shapes, I think. We have ever used a Modron in any of our campaigns, have we? They look like some Jim Henson or that one. There's a couple movies have these kind of weird aesthetics. These are really weak. Modron is the language, I guess. None of them are actually called Modron. But they are constructs, so I could still filter by construct to try to figure out something. But yeah, you could use a couple. I was picturing the classic like big robot thing, kind of a sci-fi trope, as the other big defender aside from the Mind Witnesses. Which the Warforged Titan would probably work well. It just does damage. It's a big old robot. It's got some good stats. Have it come charging out. Maybe it drops out like a... no, it doesn't drop out because they're not bringing the air. They're crashing to the ground. So that doesn't make sense. It pops out of the top area, which I guess I could. It could strobe down from the battle deck and then flop down and do a superhero landing. Or just come out of the door with the cargo hold. Maybe it's kept in a little box. Yeah. The problem is I need to have this thing trigger with the Mind Witness fights and not separate them. I think that's the key, is to have this fight together and not have it be separated. So whenever the players first trigger the Mind Witnesses by approaching the ship, I'll need to also trigger the robot, even if it makes more sense to have them hang back until they enter the ship. By the time they enter the ship, they've already dealt with these creatures, and I want to be able to combine them. Yeah, Labyrinth, Mirror Mask, I think was the one I was thinking of. Is another good one of that vein. Then have this thing exit probably around the time they're like getting within melee distance of the Mind Witness. So maybe not doing the first round, but maybe the second round, which hopefully my Mind Witnesses would revive against that. Ooh, 59 is bad. 89 is good. All right, we're gonna have the less hit point one. Might as well put it on the top. And then I would leave the carrion crawlers back and keep them with the gnome ceramorphs, so that if they do decide to throw down, the gnome ceramorphs have a little bit of backup. That's what we're looking at for Id Ascendant, though. The Boule fight initially, and then, you know, obviously some story stuff. And then for the defenses, I like the Mind Witnesses replacing the ballistas as their defense, and then using some kind of robot, which I am liking the Warforged Titan, to help really break them down, because I would certainly let them short rest once they get here. I don't know about a long rest, because that might be a little too generous of me from only 2 encounters. But hopefully we can, and maybe we don't deal with them socially, and maybe it's another fight with the gnome ceramorphs as well. But the idea was they will eventually get this Id Ascendant as either a temporary or permanent airship, essentially, and then they can continue on to do the Goliaths. And then maybe you don't even have to return to town, depending on if you can long rest in this airship now. You know, and obviously you could long rest with the Goliaths after dealing with their issue. You could do that, and then you could go into Lost Spire of Netheril, and then go right up to Revel's End. we may not be back in the 10 towns for a while, if ever, which is interesting to think about. All right, we've been going for an hour now, so I think that will do it for this week's Crafting Icewind Dale. If you enjoy the content, please check out patreon.com/Rogue Watson. Shouts to Platinum patrons Joe, Will, Thomas, Adam, Stan, William, I'm Loud, Kyle, Brandon, Genocider, David, Eclectic, Role Player, Roll, Lindsay, and shouts to new Platinum patron Christopher. And Gold patrons RPG, Papercrafts, Pretty Boy, and Yuma, Marcus, Deadlizard, Lounge, Sam, Lumpy Spuds, Jerome, Nathan, Fast Like a Tortoise, and Scott. Thank you all very much for your support. I'll see you all for some more crafting Icewind Dale on Thursday. Have a good one.